Everybody, my name is Greg Hurvitz. It's really, really cool to be able to be with you today. I am a South African, but I present to you from Melbourne, Australia. I've had a passion for sports coaching and the power of sports coaching for many, many years. And it's really just great to be able to share with like-minded people some thoughts that I have, and hopefully, even if you take one thing out of the presentation today and you're able to make it your own and able to mold it into something that makes your coaching better, then we've done our jobs more and more each time. And I really just appreciate everybody being part of this. It's an amazing experience. And obviously with COVID-19 and the amount of online content that's now available, it's really becoming, if not already, our new normal. So it's really, really great to be with you today. And I just want to thank Sean and his team for making this happen. And I'm sure you'll all be very grateful once this is all done. One of the things that really has always struck me with coaching, and I think those that are well involved in coaching will always appreciate that it's an ever-evolving scenario. Coaching is from 1 week to the next week, from 1 month, from 1 year to the next year, 1 season to the next season. Coaching is always evolving. It's always changing. And I suppose from that perspective, it makes it a bit challenging, but how exciting is it that we're always shifting and we're always with different opportunities. Now, over a period of time of working at different levels of coaching, the actual coaching itself to the administration of coaching to the strategy of coaching, I've kind of gained a little bit of insight over the last 25 odd years. And I have this kind of pet sort of phrase or maybe issue, if you want to call it, and that is that coaching is both an art and a science. And I know that a lot of us as coaches over a period of time get caught up predominantly in the science aspect of it, and we want to make sure that we're across all physical aspects of what coaching means, which is fine, and hopefully I'll be able to present that, that side of it to you. But certainly there's an art to coaching, and you will, hopefully get a sense of what that side of it is. And so I felt that it was necessary when Sean spoke to me about the idea and the concept of this presentation, to present something that actually connected science and art, and maybe just share it from that perspective. And so was born the science to the art of coaching. And I want to go through what those things mean to me. And again, I think it's important coaches take on board that coaching belongs to each individual. It's something that is uniquely yours, your recipes, your ingredients, and certainly the outcomes that happen around you. Those are things that are very unique to you. And that's why the ability to share all this information is so appreciated, because each person who goes away from this presentation is going to take something different out of something that's happened today. And I think that's one of the best things about this. And I think don't ever be protective of information that you learn on the job. A very good friend of mine in South Africa, who's now the CEO of Gauteng Cricket, John O'Leafwright, once told me that his one of his acronyms, or I suppose an acronym is a 3-letter, but this one was 4, which was CASE, which was copy and steal everything. And it was really meant in the most positive sense. And it was we were doing a coaching forum together. And it's about making available information. I certainly don't have any patent or any trademark on the information I'm about to share with you. It's available on so many platforms across the internet. You can access a lot of this. And sometimes it's just nice to be in a presentation where some of the stuff gets packaged nicely for you, maybe triggers a few things for you. So don't ever be overprotective of information. My advice to many coaches and to all of you today is to make available as much information as you can to all your colleagues and peers and friends, as much as possible. Be open to sharing. And I think what you'll find is the more open you are to sharing, the more available you're going to be to take aboard information that comes your way. So really, if I can encourage everybody to really be open and share. So without further ado, when we go through it, I'm going to open up the presentation with a video. It is a 6-minute video, and I say that because I've done, sure, I don't know, 100, 200, 300 of these types of presentations over the last years to different sets of forums. And even though my presentation as such grows and changes almost every time that I do it, this video sums up coaching for me from so many different angles. And I want to open up the presentation with this video because I think by watching this and by hearing what I've got to say after it, you're going to be able to put a lot of things together. There won't be, that's the only video in the presentation. And yeah, you'll just, we'll go through some stuff. And as Sean alluded, although I'm not here live with you today, and I really appreciate Sean accommodating me in that sense, there is social media channels that you can contact me on, and Sean will always be able to connect you to me if you want to have a discussion or disagree or agree with me on certain points. I welcome all interaction. So I'm going to put up the presentation now.
Let's go, Matt. Let's go. Go, Jonathan. Show me something. 10 yards. Show me some power. No knees. Keep your knees off the ground. Show me something. There you go. 10 yards. Show me some muscle. Show me some power. Give me some heart. Let's go. Very good, boy. Very good. Let's run it back.
Not even funny, dude.
So, Coach, how strong is Westview this year?
A lot stronger than we are.
You already written Friday night down as a loss, Brock?
Well, not if I know we could beat them.
Come here, Brock. You too, Jeremy.
What, am I in trouble now?
Not yet. I want to see you do the death crawl again, except I want to see your absolute best.
What, you want me to go to the 30?
I think you can go the 50.
50. I can go to the 50 if nobody's on my back.
I think you can do it with Jeremy on your back. But even if you can, I want you to promise me you're going to do your best.
All right.
Your best.
Okay.
You going to give me your best?
I'm going to give you my best.
All right, one more thing. I want you to do it blindfolded.
Why?
Because I want you giving up at a certain point when you can go further. Get down. Jeremy, get on his back. Get a good tight hold, Jeremy. All right. Let's go, Brock. Keep your knees off the ground, just your hands and feet. There you go. A little bit left. A little bit left. There you go. Show me good effort. That way, Brock. You keep coming. There you go. It's a good start. A little bit left. A little bit left. There you go, Brock. Good strength. That's it, Brock. That's it.
Not at the 20 yet.
Forget the 20. You give me your best. You keep going. That's it. No, don't stop, Brock. You got more in you than that.
I ain't done. Just resting a second.
You got to keep moving. Let's keep moving. Let's go. Don't quit till you got nothing left. There you go. Keep moving. Keep moving. Keep moving, Brock. That's it. You keep driving. Keep your knees off the ground. Keep driving it. Your very best. Your very best. Your very best. Keep moving, Brock. That's it. That's it. That's it. Keep going. Don't quit on me. Keep going. Keep driving it. Keep driving. Keep your knees off the ground. That's it.
Okay, so definitions in terms of sport and coaching, I always find that trying to define coaching is, and Sean and potentially a good friend of ours, Theo, will potentially smile at this, but when someone asks you to define leadership or define what a manager is, you kind of, everyone's got a different definition. Everyone's got I've always acknowledged good definitions around leadership, but there's no one definition that says that's leadership, or there's no one definition that separates leadership and management. There's different ones, and coaching is pretty much exactly the same. But the catch here is that you need to find a definition for yourself. It needs to be yours, and it's going to be yours because that's what you're going to build your coaching philosophy on. And your coaching philosophy, why, when it comes to coaching, why do I, and then you've got to finish the sentence for yourself. Why do I wake up in the morning and want to coach? Why do I work at the school that I work at to coach the sport that I do? Why do I work at Hamilton's Rugby Club or UCT or Potch or King Edwards or Paul Boys? Why do I do what I do? What do I get out of it? And so I want to define, because the presentation is, for me, the science and the art of coaching, I want to define what these things are. And these are definitions that I found online. And again, you may have different definitions, and that's okay. So the definition of science is the intellectual and practical activity encompassing the systematic study of the structure and behavior of the physical and natural world through observation and experiment. Now, when you read that, if you don't get a sense of your coaching world, then I would go as far as to say you're probably not coaching properly, and you might want to consider giving up, because every word in that definition of science speaks to something that we need to be doing whilst we are in the action of coaching. All right? The definition of art, as you can all read there, the expression or application of human creative skill and imagination, typically in a visual form such as a painting or sculpture, producing works to be appreciated primarily for their beauty and emotional power. Now, the only part there that we obviously can potentially say that doesn't apply to us is where it talks about a painting or sculpture. But the expression or the application of human creative skill and imagination, producing works of art to be appreciated primarily for their beauty or emotional power, how is that not sports coaching? In my opinion, it absolutely is 100% sports coaching. And you can see, as far as I'm concerned, that between the definitions of science and art, there is almost the definition of coaching. So what is the definition of coaching? Again, this is going to be something that belongs, is unique to everybody. But simply, coaching is a process that aims to improve performance and focuses of the individual for maximum improvement and benefit to the team in the here and now, keeping one eye clearly on building a process. Coaching is about unlocking a person's potential to maximize their own performance, and it's helping them to learn rather than teaching them. You need, what I would suggest to many coaches is that you would need to go through these three definitions, and you need to be able to shape your own circumstance, your own environment into what these definitions can mean to you. Okay, it's very important that you find a meaning and a reason to you. Okay, if we move on, we need to work out really what is important. Now, there's lots of things that are important, okay? But the real focus in coaching should always be, as far as I'm concerned, in the people that we're coaching. The sport is the vehicle. We need to make great people. So many coaches. I'm sure many of you, certainly from my perspective, if I reflect on successful teams, then I would generally reflect on the quality and caliber of the human character in each of my players that has contributed to the outcome. That quality and caliber can extend also to, obviously, to coaches, and you yourself as a coach need to be able to acknowledge that you are bringing something to the party. Now, I've given you some examples there of where we've heard these stories before. You look at the 1995 Rugby World Cup winning South African rugby side. There was a story of human triumph, of human spirit. 2007, again, South Africa rugby had come out of a very dark space of Kamp Staaldraad and Rudolf Strauly and getting absolutely smashed in 2003 and taking on record scores, etc., etc. In 2007, we turned it around. We turned it around with good people. 2019, I don't have to tell any of you what happened in 2019. Rassie Erasmus and Siya Kolisi. Triumphs of humanity, great human beings, great people that have values-focused outcomes. Jurgen Klopp at Liverpool just happens to be my team, and I'm very proud of that. But every time Jurgen Klopp speaks, he's speaking to you from a values perspective. He's building a team of good people. He doesn't take, people that don't behave properly are not welcome. So I was very privileged to chat to Johan Ackerman at the height of the Lions and their success as a Super Rugby franchise. And Johan Ackerman always referenced to me that one of the things I spoke about in that Lions team was positive DNA, and that they wanted to leave positive DNA wherever they were, whatever aspect of their interaction with the public, with each other, with other teams, with opposition, etc. There had to be a positive experience. Their seated area, the side of a field, cleaning up their change rooms, etc. So great people. So to take further the concept of art and science, the art of coaching will be vested in the philosophies and the values-driven model a coach or a coaching team will adopt and implement to access the individual for optimal outcome in a team space. So in effect, it's always going to be about, art being that ability to mold and take external influences and mold, create, and keep creating for optimal growth. That you're never stopping. You're always interacting. You're always growing. Okay. The science side of it is going to be the specific technical steps that as a coach we're going to be taking when it comes to building physical technique, skills, emotional and mental management steps that we need to engage to make sure that we get to the team outcomes. Okay. So in effect, it's going to be, I certainly believe it's very important that as a coach, in any environment that you're interacting in, you're going to be able to circumstantially differentiate in the present, in the moment. You're going to need to circumstantially differentiate when you need to be an artist and when you need to be a scientist, and how you engage with your team of people around you, be it assistant coaches or players, how you engage with those people when you're an artist or when you're a scientist. You need to make sure that you are clear about who you are and how you're talking and what your expectations are. And over time, as we'll see now, when we start to talk a bit further, you'll start to see what I'm really talking about in that space. So I've got some factors that I work into sports coaching, and I can tell you that if you'd asked me 15 years ago to do this presentation, it would have been completely different. My factors in sports coaching 20 years ago would have been dramatically different to what they are now. That's an absolute, I can guarantee you. And I'm hoping that the same applies to all of you, that you're able to evolve your coaching with the times and able to move with the times. And so my factors as I'm experiencing in coaching now, because I'm back into coaching now, which is an interesting experience for me. The first one that's very, very important to me is culture. Now, the definition of culture that I have found and that resonated with me is the ideas, customs, and social behavior of a particular people or society. And in our instance, we will then say group, team, organization, franchise, school, club. That's a grouping of people, all right? So the ideas, customs, and social behavior of a particular group or society. The next very important factor for me is process. You have to be a process engineer. You have to be able to engineer process as a successful coach. The definition of process is a series of actions or steps that you will take in order to achieve a particular end goal. Again, I know that this resonates with all of you as sports coaches because you all take these steps and actions in the pursuit of the different definitions of success, which can be a conversation for another day. Then the third and the final of my three factors is performance. And that's the action of performing a task or a function. You all know that if you've built a culture or a process, it comes down to the performance. We have different measurements of performance and success. I certainly believe that I would be far more interested in assessing my process to make sure that my outcome looks after itself. If you're focusing on the outcome before you focus on the process, generally I would go as far as to say you'll probably be unsuccessful because you need to build process. And we'll talk about it a little bit later, but where you see that your outcome is not really what you want it to be, it's not about assessing the outcome, it's about assessing your process, and it's about going into your culture to see where you can fix those two. I've only got 3 up here, and I can tell you again, if I had to do this 20 years ago, I'd probably have 15 or 20 factors to sports coaching here. I believe that the key to coaching is actually to keep it as simple as possible, and I've only been able to do that over a period of time. So my advice to you is also to just try and move with trying to keep it as simple as possible. In all of this, everything has to involve a connection. I said to you earlier that it's about coaching people. It's about your interaction with another human being. It's about engaging with a human being. And so that connection, the relationship that develops between a coach and the athlete, your players, it has to go from an engagement to a relationship in as quick and as an effective time as possible. Don't rush it, let it build. But one of your mini processes in all of what you're doing is to make sure that you build a relationship between coach and player. And the definition of a relationship is the way in which 2 or more people are connected, or the state, as it says here, or the state of being connected. And it's always going to be a two-way street. I want to be very clear. Many coaches have become what I call pleasers, and they do what their players want or what their principals want or what the club president wants, or, and I understand that ultimately a principal at a school pays your salary, the CEO of a sporting franchise pays your salary, but you've got to try and understand that as a two-way street, there's got to be an honest and constructive and open relationship where you are building with players and people around you. It has to be that way. So I want to know for you in a little bit more detail to try and give you a bit more around that. So culture is not what you think you want to do. Culture is what you do. All right? I can take you back to the definitions of culture that we spoke about earlier, where I said that it was ideas and customs and social behaviors of a group of people. Okay? So why do we need culture? Again, this is me asking the question of myself and sharing it with you. And as far as I'm concerned, we need it because it gives meaning to why we do what we agree to do as a group. It guides the individual's behavior for group benefit. It allows for a common conversation to take place where I, as a coach, can be held accountable by the same standards that the players are being held accountable. That is what a culture, the benefit of a culture brings. The worst enemy of culture is selfish people. And whilst we want to remain as positive as possible in all our sporting engagements and our environments, we also have to be very aware that if you are able, or you identify selfishness in any aspect of your team environment, you would be well advised to get rid of that as soon as possible. How you get rid of that, that's going to be circumstantial, and it's going to be something you're going to have to deal with in your own instant. You know, it may mean that you can actually convert the selfish person into someone who's not so selfish. I'm not sure. But selfish people within trying to build a positive culture, that is really not going to be of benefit to you. And it's also then moving forward that it's essential that informing the culture, the uniqueness and the individual, the uniqueness of the individual, should I say, is celebrated, is accessed and encouraged. You have to understand that you cannot have the same expectations of every single individual. Why? Because every one person is different to the next. We are unique, and to get the optimal out of each person, you have to be an artist. You have to extract the best you can out of an individual, whilst we take in the extraneous ingredients and influences around us to mold to a desired outcome. So celebrate the individuality, celebrate the uniqueness of the individual. You have to have synergy with honesty, and that has to exist at every level, from both the coach and the athlete. The days of the authoritarian coach with the power base and holding, that can't exist anymore. As far as I'm concerned, you have to engage almost as an equal. There is a boundary, and yes, as a coach, you do have a certain level of authority, but if you've done your job properly in engaging and building a culture, you won't have to force any level of authority on any group. You will be duly respected for the position you hold if you've done various things. And I hope to unpack some of those things for you today further. The capacity to appreciate the power of the mental strength in preparing the group is vital. And this is where the science is going to come into this area of group preparation. Many times over many years, in fact, I would say one of my defaults as a coach in searching for support mechanisms and support staff to help us achieve our performance goals, I would always default to a sports psychologist to ensure that we were accessing the mental and emotional strength of every individual and helping us to build a unified group. So some key focuses around building culture will be to celebrate diversity and acknowledge adversity and make it safe. You have to make building the culture of your group a very safe space. People have to be able to express themselves without fear of any judgment or any negativity whatsoever. And focus on building the person. That's got to be your focus in building a culture. It's about building the people all the time. If you are not building people, if you are not growing people, I will tell you right now, you are in the wrong business and you need to leave coaching forthwith and immediately, because you are actually damaging more than anything. So that's where culture will continue to play a very, very important role in how you do your job. Just some clips that I wanted to show you just to further expound on culture. So what is culture is the question, and this comes from Bo Hansen, who is an Australian Olympian, a rowing Olympian as far as I recall. And I did a lot of work with Bo Hansen when I was in South Africa, and Bo did quite a few video sessions for us in South Africa. And this is something that he's said to me, is that the short answer is that while some sports teams' cultures can create sustained success, others will only deliver success in the short term, if at all. Culture is a critical factor in the success of any organized group, whether that be corporate organizations or a sports team. One of the common phrases that you'll always hear about culture is the way we behave here. And listen, I've challenged a lot of school colleagues of mine, because one of the potential negatives of culture is that you get caught up in, this is the way we've always done it. That's not culture. That's not culture. That's that's sort of draconian traditional beliefs that you need to. Culture means you're evolving. I said to you earlier that coaching evolves, sport evolves, it's ever changing. You cannot ever be held down by anything just because this is the way we always behave here, or this is the way we do things around this place. Certain fundamentals can certainly continue to play a role, but don't be held back by these types of things, okay? Another interesting one, which you can see there and obviously read, and I don't have to read it for you, but effectively, I want to just be clear that culture is not about being held back. It's not about investing yourself and hiding behind tradition. Culture and tradition, I don't believe, are the same thing, by the way. And I know that a lot of the monastic schools, the boys' schools, the traditional schools, particularly in South Africa and in New Zealand, I think a lot of the times we use tradition as an excuse. We're very scared of growth and change, and so we hide behind tradition. Tradition is not culture. Don't fall into the trap of trying to convince me that culture and tradition are the same thing. They're not. They're very, very much, very, very different. And I don't even venture to discuss tradition, because I think it's just far too unique. And obviously, so many schools starting at different times have different lengths of traditions. But I want you as a coach to be very clear that I really don't want you to fall into the trap of some type of safety net or some type of delusion that tradition is guiding where you're at the moment. You are coaching in the here and the now. Do you have to respect where you've come from? Absolutely. Does that have to guide where you're going? Potentially. Does it absolutely define where you're going? Definitely not. Definitely not. The next of my three factors being process, and I spoke to you about process engineering and the ability to, in this instance, engineer process means you've got to be almost the determining factor of your process building. You are the one building a process that is specific to where you are in the here and now. Can you reflect on experiences? Absolutely. As I'm doing today, after 25 years of being involved in this, absolutely you must reflect on your experiences. So I want you to just read this from a scientific perspective with regards to process. And I wasn't able to track the author of who had written this, but sports training as a process of morpho-functional adaptation. So I think for us sort of laymen who are not medically qualified, I would go along to say that morpho-functional refers to your body and how you move and how you use your body. So the functions of your body. Increasing performance means to reach systematically a certain number of both non-specific and specific changes, mainly at a cellular level, i.e. to increase in energy potentials, development of physiological functions, breathing, heart activity, and improving coordination. The basis of such changes can be easily explained by physiological concepts, homeostasis, stress, and adaptation. So what is this homeostasis, etc.? And I think it's important that I want to stress that I'm not prioritizing art over science or science over art. They coexist. You have to know when you're bringing what in and what you need to bring in at a particular time. So homeostasis is a constant balanced state of the organism. Okay, that's what homeostasis by definition is. But from the point of view of sports training, homeostasis can be imagined really as a current level of training before sort of a training cycle begins. So in other words, it's your starting point. It's where you're at. When you wake up in the morning, you're at a state of homeostasis. You're at a point of, when you get up and you start. Now you're going to exert and train, etc. And now you're going to agitate the homeostasis. And this moves into the next part, which is then you're going to stress, the homeostasis levels, so to speak. And the sort of medical terminology or the scientific terminology here would be that you're in a controlled, it's a controlled violation of homeostasis with physical activity, a basic principle of improving your fitness. And sports training attempts to violate the homeostasis of the athlete in a controlled way through exercise load. Now, I will venture to say that even when you're building a culture, you are positively violating and stressing the homeostasis. You're taking from a place of a homeostasis, and you're going to now agitate it, stress it, and move it forward by exerting and by causing the stress. And the third part is adaptation. Now, just generally by the word adaptation, you have to adapt. You have to be agile, and you have to be able to move and change with the times, okay? And adaptation is defined as a beneficial change of the organism, which aims at maintaining homeostasis, but now at a higher level, at a new level, at the process that you followed, and that's purely in respect to quality. Now, in sports coaching, adaptation is the basis of higher levels of training. And you'll see when I come to the performance aspect, what we're talking about, moving ourselves through a process. We go from homeostasis, we need to cause some stress, and we need to be adaptive to move ourselves to a higher level. And that applies to culture, to the human being, and to performance. And you'll see how that comes to the fore as we carry on. So in looking at process, the process engineering term that I use, it's about building blocks. It's about creating little steps, little milestones that you use to build to an end goal. Now, why do we need this? Why do we need building blocks? A group will collectively need to onboard ideas. You can't just have ideas in isolation. You have to have a collective onboarding of ideas, and your culture and your process, your culture is going to help you move forward in that aspect. Process is both a bridge between culture and performance, but it's also an umbrella to the entire system. By definition, my three factors that I'm raising, that I'm putting to you today, of culture, process, and performance, is collectively a system. And what I'm saying to you now is that I view process as not only a bridge between culture and performance, but an overarching umbrella of both. So why do we need process? That's why I believe you need process. The danger here is that you could have a great culture, but you haven't collectively bought into the process. That's not going to lead to success. So don't think that if you have a great culture, but your process engineering is weak, you're not going to have performance success if your process is not well formed and well worked on, and collectively well formed and well worked on. It has to be genuine. You have to be open, honest, safe. That's why I emphasized that in the beginning. You have to be honest. It's a two-way street. It has to be a safe space where you are celebrating the uniqueness of the human being, the individuality of the person, to bring forward everything into the melting pot, of which is our group, so that we can collectively agree. Being fake, and I've said it here, fake has no lifespan. Fake will only get you to a certain point, and then it's gone, and you will be seen through in a heartbeat. Okay, it's got to be detailed, but analysis paralysis is something you have to be very conscious of. Do not get halted in over-analyzing. I said it to you earlier. If Sean had asked me to present on this in 2009, I would have given you 20 factors of coaching. I don't want you to get caught up in too much detail. 3 factors, that's all I've got. Just keep it simple. There's so much going on in a team environment. The amount of content, the cognitive expectation is so exceptionally high. You need to be very, 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 very clear that you're keeping it as simple as possible to get your messages across. Focusing on the little steps after the desired and identified and agreed outcome is absolutely imperative. Part of your culture formation and part of your process is going to be to set goals. Is going to be to say, yes, we want to lift the cup at the end of this, or yes, we want to be this, or yes, we want to be that, or yes, we want to achieve that. Those are goals. You must have those. You must build outcome. Just don't focus on it. It mustn't be the absolute means to the end. This is the means. Don't worry about the end. Let's get this right. You get this right, your outcome looks after itself. But if you focus on the outcome in isolation, I've seen it in many, many, many seasons in different codes. If you focus solely on the outcome, I am telling you as a fact, you will not succeed. Not sustainably anyway. As a coach, you need to have a very keen eye on both detail of the here and now, but you also have to have a view of the big picture. You also need to know what you're looking for in 3 or 4 seasons' time. Now, to those of you that are involved, particularly with schools, you have 5, if you're in a secondary school, you have 5 years that you have kids for. You have a sports department that you're looking to build a brand off the back of. You've got to be able to give the under 14 year 8 girl playing netball everything possible in year 8 with the vision of this girl playing first team netball by the time she's in year 11 or year 10, however you work in your school. You've got to have that in your radar, but you don't necessarily bother her with it at the time of her year 8 year. She just needs to enjoy her netball in year 8. That hockey player just wants to function as the best hockey player he or she can be in year 8 or year 9. First team will come. It will come. But you have to be able, as the expert coach in that space, focus on the here and now, understanding what the big picture is. Don't burden the athlete with that though, okay? You as a coach need to access the human resources that are needed in the here and now, and you need to access everything that isn't human, all the technology, all the stuff on the internet, any resources you can get your hands on, get your eyes on, reading, studying, learning all the time. You need to access that to make sure that you are delivering the best coaching experience possible to the individual, that they can reach their best version of themselves in the here and the now, okay? Even in individual sports, even in sports such as tennis or squash or swimming, where, and to a large extent, I would argue that cricket potentially has a bit of individualisticness to it. There's such an English word. But you're always accountable to somebody. You're always, when I say accountable, I'm not meaning from a reporting sense, but you always owe somebody something. In swimming, it's your coach. When you go to the Olympics for the swimming team, you're representing your country. You're representing your swimming colleagues that are with you. So you're always part of something. Don't ever believe you're just on your own, because Novak Djokovic or Rafa Nadal, they've got coaching teams, 12, 15 people that work with them. They're accountable to those people. When they're out there performing, they are accountable to those people. They are delivering for those people. So don't be confused by what the code is. This stuff works for any sport, potentially even for chess. Those of you, I'm happy to debate whether chess is a sport. Certainly my chess stars over the years have been pretty conclusive that they feel it's a sport. I'm okay with that. That's fine. But this works. Next, constructive communication. We have to be effective. And I know Sean works with it all the time. Communication, communication, communication. Sometimes we can talk absolute rubbish. It's a waste of time. We need to be constructive with our communication. You need to develop collective buy-in. You need to have belief in the process, which will allow same-page conversations. It's so important to be able to have a conversation in a group where we're talking from the same page, whether it be our culture, the values we've developed in our culture, if it's honesty, integrity, commitment, dedication. Constructive communication allows or could be the vehicle for a same-page conversation, which in sporting groups I've seen is so crucial. Same-page conversations, holding ourselves to consistent standards that are the same for everybody. Although we celebrate the diversity and we acknowledge adversity, We need to be able to consistently have constructive communication. Okay, that means honest, but you don't have to break someone's spirit when you're honest. You can still be constructive when you're giving feedback. So be sure that the word constructive, which is a very positive word, but it's a very honest word, that needs to become part of your vocabulary when you are planning out anything. Let's be constructive. Let's be effective. Constructive means building. It means going somewhere. Focus on that word and keep it as part of your vocabulary. And it's best to create mini measurement points along your process. Don't look for the end goal. It's not just about the trophy that comes at the end of the English Premier League. What have we done to make our group a happier group? What have we done? One of the biggest measurements that I used when I was involved in school sport was how many kids returned season after season to that sport. How did that sport grow season upon season? If it grows, you're doing wonderful, wonderful things. If you're able to attract new players to your sport at a school, you're doing amazing, amazing things. If you're then also able to win some trophies along the way, that's amazing. But at a school, you're encouraging activity and you're encouraging growth and you're attracting people to not live a sedentary lifestyle, to be active with you. That is amazing. So when I would measure coaches year on year, I would always look at how many kids stayed in the sport. Did they attract any new kids to the sport? Certainly if I wanted to bring them back the season after, which was always the goal, who was returning back to them? You know, what retention did they have? Those are very, very important things. So my point being, just create, whatever your circumstances are, create multiple mini measurement points that you as a coach are just able to measure with your coaching team, measure your process along the way. Is it being effective? Remain dynamic. If it's not being effective, get rid of it, change it, and move on. Don't harp on stuff that isn't working. If it isn't working, move on. Drop it. Okay, so be flexible, adaptive. Remember, we spoke about adaptation. Always be adaptive to what's happening around you. So what does process look like? Now, I generally liked to create real life indicators of what all these fancy value-based words were. Process, integrity, honesty, all wonderful words. But what do they actually look like in real life? When I say to a school student, you know, I want you to have integrity when you're on the field. I want you to be honest. And they say to me, but what does that look like? And you have to find ways of indicating to your athletes, to your group, tangible behaviors, things that, and sometimes, unfortunately, what happens is the opposite behavior happens, and then you can say to the person, you see that? That's not what I want. Generally, if you show what you don't want, that can help you understand what you do want. So don't be shy of bringing those out. It's not negative. Just be constructive about it. So this phase here is kind of, for me, where art and science almost come together. This is not a place where art or science is one or the other. They're definitely coexisting in this space. And if we can build from here, from the cultural agreement and the synergy that we've spoken about, and we step up more into implementation space, the process will define the parts of culture, and it will give us tangible components to see how we will make culture come alive. So we've engineered our process. What does it look like? It belongs to the group. No two processes are the same. Don't try and compare one process to another. Just be in the here, be present. Look at this process and this group of people, this situation. That's the process you're worried about. Don't worry about something else. Certainly there can be similarities, of course, but they will never be the same. They will never, ever be the same. Why? Because no two people are the same. That means that the people you're interacting with are different to the people you interacted with the day before, because no two people are the same. Okay? Appreciate the uniqueness without being afraid of it. For the individuals, so let's have a look at this. So process in two ways, essentially, from Sportlizer Academy, which is a resource that I refer to often. We have conformity, which I'm debating in my mind every single day because I belong to various groups. and I'm sort of working around conformity. Now, that's internally, it's an internally driven desire to accept influence because the team chooses to do so. Sometimes we don't want to do things. Okay, I'm in a situation where there's often times where I'm thinking, oh, I don't want to do that, but because my teammates have gone and done it, I've got to do it. I've got to conform. Okay, so there's conformity. And then you have compliance. And compliance is an externally imposed acceptance of influence, often regulated by strong rewards, and strong punishment for that matter as well. Now, you need to work out, you know, it's more likely that compliance is sort of more likely among the low status group members. Now, I don't want to create classist environments here, but where there are statuses and maybe your juniors, your new entrants into a group, your freshies, whatever you want to call them, they generally are compliant. They don't ask questions, they don't challenge the so-called status quo, they comply. They just get on with it. Whereas certainly conformity is much more something that's happening at your seniors, at people that have been around the team a lot longer of the time. So I would always, personally, I would encourage that you remove status as soon as possible. Status should be, you know, and I grew up in teams, by the way, that I came in and we had all types of initiation procedures and, you know, being new to the team and, you know, you had certain things, you know, shave your eyebrows, run around the field, whatever the case may be. There were all different types of initiation mechanisms to try and bring you into this group. I understand that those exist, but I think there's a way that it can exist without necessarily sort of degrading the human spirit. I think there's ways that you can drive positive conformity by removing status. When someone gets into a team, if they are seen as lower or you know, an entry level, why you want them to be on this level, right, in terms of the team dynamic, but you want them to contribute on the same level as you. How does that even mathematically make sense? Someone comes into a team, bang, that's where it is. Everyone's on the same level. No one arrives, no one's carrying someone else's bag, polishing someone else's shoes. 25 years ago, I would have been saying something completely different because I was in a different headspace and I'd come out of a different environment. 25 years later, being in a far different position, having different experiences, I can tell you that that model doesn't work. It does not work when you're in the team. I'm not talking about boys' schools where we see under 14 sports team running around with water bottles or whatever. I'm not talking about that. That's a different story. I'm talking about when you're in the same team. There cannot be status. Remove it. Get rid of it. It will help you build your culture and it'll help you engineer your process so much easier. Why do you want to complicate issues by having to deal with who's a junior, and who's been in the team for 3 months and who's been in the team for 6 months? What a load of rubbish. What a waste of my time as a coach. Wouldn't interest me in the slightest. Right, now we get on to the performance side of things, which in reality is where everybody is ultimately focused, okay? The end game where we see the benefits of constructive culture and collective process. If you want to call it collective culture and constructive process, be my guest. That's absolutely fine because the words all fit into each other and you can work it out how it suits you and what suits you. Now, this stage is either going to form a micro culmination of the efforts invested to this point, as is with the case with a school season, a school sporting model, as I've referred to already, where there's multiple codes, multiple age groups, or it may be the absolute culmination, okay? What's the absolute culmination? A league victory, a cup, a tournament, the Rugby World Cup, the Netball World Cup, the Olympics, where there is an absolute culmination. That is the end of this process. There's no question. When we perform at the Rugby World Cup, we win certain games, we stay. We lose, we go home. Soccer World Cup, same thing. Those are absolute culmination points of process. And performance must never be taken for granted and certainly can't be left in the background. Don't ever think that you can do, again, just culture and process and then just leave performance. You have to pay attention to performance. Of course you do. There's lessons in all performances. Okay, there's lessons in winning and there's lessons in losing. And when winning, I believe that sometimes we kind of feel, well, we're winning, so let's just leave everything. I must be honest, as a coach, that was when I was on my highest alert, was when we were winning. I wanted to make sure that we continued to win, that it wasn't about, and continuing to win, by the way, that doesn't mean win at all costs. I wanted to make sure that our culture stayed right and that our process stayed right, that we continued on a positive trajectory, okay? Because winning, a lot of times, can breed complacency and arrogance. So you have to be very much alert when it comes to lots of winning. When we lose, I would certainly run a check personally, like almost like a car mechanic almost. When we were losing, the biggest enemy here when you lose is panic. Don't panic. Losing is not an invitation to panic. Now, perhaps I'm preaching to the converted, because as a coach, you're sometimes on the wrong end of panic, where schools, I've been a victim of it, where a rugby season at Jeppe Boys in 2003 wasn't going the way, or 2004 wasn't going the way it should. Much to my amazement, I got called in the middle of the season and the headmaster said, "You're out, sorry." And I was like, are you joking? So I know that you're a victim of panic sometimes. I'm asking you as a coach, don't ever panic to the extent that your players are victims of that panic, okay? Be patient, but run the check. Run the oil check on your process, because if your performance and your outcomes have not been what you were hoping, something in your process has not been as good as it can be. I'm not talking that you failed. I'm just saying something could have been done better. Your job as the coach is to go back in to the training process, the mental preparation, the physical preparation, the emotional preparation, try and find out somewhere where our process could have been better. And if you look hard enough, you will find it. I know that it's hard, because as a coach, you take it personally. You almost feel it is a personal reflection on who you are as an individual, because there hasn't been a victory of some sort. And to go back into the process is almost very introspective, and it's hard. It's hard to acknowledge that perhaps I haven't done something right. It's very easy to tell other people, and I know that's hard, but you've got to give yourself that opportunity. Once you've done the check, the feedback and how you deliver the feedback post-performance is absolutely fundamental. Feedback has one singular goal, and that is to improve your group. Nothing else. You never ever deliver feedback that breaks a person or breaks a team spirit. That is not feedback. That is, as far as I'm concerned, that's bullying. Because as a coach, you're a coward if you are delivering feedback that breaks your group. That's cowardly, and that is a form of bullying as far as I'm concerned. And again, if that's who you are, please don't carry on coaching. So make sure that with feedback, your one aim is to improve. That's all you want to do. You don't need to remind an assistant coach or a player of what they've done wrong. I promise you that if the performance hasn't gone the way you've hoped, everybody knows what they've done wrong. I assure you of that. You don't need to remind them, okay? If they don't necessarily stand up or own up, that's a different conversation. Never do that in the group. Take someone quietly to the side and say, look, I think you should have been more accountable for your actions. I think you should have stood up to your downfalls in the game a bit more, and work with that person to grow that person, because that's a weakness. If you're not able to step up and be accountable for where you haven't done perhaps your best, that is a life skill, and sport teaches life skills. So if you don't take up that opportunity to teach somebody that life skill of accountability, of responsibility, of taking accountability or responsibility for something that you haven't delivered, you have missed an opportunity as a coach. We don't want to miss opportunities. We want to take every single opportunity that we get. This image that you see on your screen now, where it talks about performance management and monitor, review, improve, measure, etc. That for me is what I would call the cycle of performance. These exist in various images, and you can make your own, or you can find plenty on the internet. What is a cycle of performance? A place, as far as I'm concerned, where the detailed work has been sustainably worked at, and the system, okay, so remember I told you what a system was. For me, the 3 factors: culture, process, performance, that's a system. So where the system starts to look after itself, and in my experience, with the right work being done, this comes into action round about year 4 or 5 of a 7-year plan. Now, when you're working with secondary school children, you have a set 5 years. If you're working with primary school children, you have a 7-year time frame. In Australia, it's a little bit different. You have 6 years and 6 years, I think, because year 7 they go off to high school. But the reality is that your plan in building a sports program and a coaching of a team must, as I said to you, have an eye always on the bigger picture. And if you've done your work properly, this cycle of performance that you see in front of you starts to work for itself. That allows you as a coach to focus on different things as opposed to these 3 factors. You're now able to maybe work a bit more with the support coaches, work a bit more with the psychology guys, work a bit more on the values, and start to spend a little bit more specific time in culture or in process or in performance. What I'm saying to you is if you get the cycle of performance correct, you then start to have the opportunity to choose where you can spend your time. Up until that point, you don't necessarily have that choice. You have to constantly work at culture and performance and process all the time. But once you get it right and the cycle of performance kicks in, you, as far as I'm concerned, I would say you would be released from detailed focus, and you now all of a sudden can spend some time on having longer conversations with individuals, longer conversations with support staff, looking at other partners around you to engage in, looking at other resources all the time. It's a wonderful place. I've had the privilege of getting to this place twice in my career, only twice. And I can tell you that it's a wonderful, wonderful feeling to know that you've built something that is now turning over and working for itself. It's very, very rewarding. And I want to implore you to be able to pat yourself in the back when you acknowledge that this phase has come to you, because it's not easy, and you really need to be able to acknowledge yourself and the role that you've played in that. So some practical thoughts around performance, because ultimately I wrote an article a few years ago where I did the differentiation between a scoreboard and a smile board. And the scoreboard obviously is the win or loss. It's very clear, either you win or you lose. There's no comments column. It's very clear. If you've won, you've won. If you've lost, you've lost. No one's interested in how it happened. It just happened. Whereas the smile board is more about how people are enjoying their sport. And I would certainly hope to, like to believe that in the school environment, there's a lot more smile board focuses are than there are scoreboard focuses. But I understand that we certainly don't participate in sport to lose. And I wouldn't want anyone to be participating in sport to lose, but we can't win at all costs either. So in this space where we're talking about performance, the end game, where we hopefully are seeing the benefits of constructive culture and collective process, science is probably going to play a bit more of a prevalent role here than in the other 2 factors. The management of your muscles, of creating optimum exertion versus efficacy in competition. To this end, all of these things, they are absolutely fundamental to remind us as coaches that we must. It's important here to recognize that, again, you don't coach robots, you coach people. So even though science is very prevalent here, don't forget that you coach people, not robots. So they have emotions, they have feelings, they have thoughts, and you need to take that on board. Yes, you're using science to create stronger, fitter, faster individuals, but they are still individuals and they're still human beings. One of the key elements that I just want to talk about specifically is fatigue in performance. And this is going to lead to a very key point that I want to make about performance. Now, the onset of fatigue can absolutely be rapid. And I'm really talking practically now. I want you to almost envision yourself in your competitive space. That's on the side of a field or the side of a court or the side of a pool. I want you to envision yourself in this particular space. Now, the onset of, as I say, the onset of fatigue can be absolutely rapid, and it's normally the result of cumulative effects that have come from weeks or months or years of physical effort, right? That cumulative effect. Now, you have to realize that scientifically, unless, you know, and the management of fatigue, particularly in the international arena, is a very seriously managed area. And you've always heard rugby union teams, AFL footy teams, even cricket to a certain extent, they create rotations of where they're resting players. That's all management of fatigue. That's all management of the physiological aspect of the physical nature of sport. So you have to know, and you need to play this video in your head 1,000 times, by the way, because playing a video in your head allows you to react far more professionally in the situation as opposed to just being reactive. But it could be this game, that you are watching, that cumulative effect hits the player, and they are just, to use no better term than the good old Afrikaans phrase, they are sat. It's just, they're done. They are finished. They've got nothing more to give. Somehow it's just arrived. The lactic acid is in and they're fatigued, and that's it. Now, what I will say is that if that does happen, again, I hold the coaching force accountable. It's on you as the coach, because you would not have in your process sustainably been aware of the fullest well-being of your athlete, that you've allowed it to happen, that they've got to that one game and bang, it's popped and they are sat and they're finished and they can't give you anything more. And I've seen it. I've seen coaches go absolutely berserk on the side of a field. And I've looked at the player and I can see that that player is mentally, emotionally, and physically done. They cannot give any more. And that means that we have failed as coaches. Don't fail in that space. You never, ever forsake the well-being of your players for anything, not for any result, not for any medal or any cup or any trophy. The well-being of people in your care is absolutely your priority at every single turn, and decision that you make must be based in ensuring the well-being of your people. So we shouldn't get to a place of collapse, because we should be managing that over our process. We should be looking after our players' mental, emotional, and physical states. Now, it obviously, you know, once they fatigue. So shouting and screaming and jumping up and down on the sideline or on the side of the court or the pool, it's not going to render anything. The only thing you're going to do is you're actually going to separate the relationship. You're going to damage the relationship between you and this individual, because you're actually not recognizing where they are as individuals. So you have to use performance practice in your preparations. And I'll talk to you a little bit about performance practice now. There's 7 steps, okay? 7 steps to performance practice. Performance practice step 1 is performing the skill. Now, really here, this is a friend of mine once told me, and it was a wonderful phrase: repetition is the mother of all skill. It's as simple as that. Doing things over and over and over and over again. Repetition is the mother of all skill. Start slowly, allow the neurons to cement the skill and the action required in your mind muscle memory, and commit to this part. This is absolutely, here is a mini process within the process of driving performance practice. Okay? It's the art, performance practice is as it says there for you, the art of simulating competition intensity. So perform the skill. Number 2, perform the skill very well. So can you see how this is broken down into the most simplistic terms? Is it taken for granted that we want to perform the skill well? Absolutely. But let's perform the skill first, and then let's perform it very well. Okay? Mastering the skills will only come from regular and repetitive practice, which is then combined with constructive feedback from your coaches, which we've covered on, and certainly would potentially could incorporate the use of video or any other, performance analysis that, or technologies that that you have. But nothing will ever beat your eye as a coach. Nothing will ever beat you watching and giving first-hand feedback, which is constructive to your players. Nothing will ever beat that. Number 3, perform the skill very well and at speed. So unless the skill or the skill set that you're working on can withstand competition level speed, including the accelerations that you would need in competition, the agility requirements that you may need in competition, the communication that you absolutely need in competition, and the explosiveness that you'd need in competition, then you're not competition ready. So all of your preparation, Gary Player would say it often, the way you train is the way you play. You're going to train sloppy, you're going to play sloppy, and the opposite is true. So train with competition intensity and you will perform with competition intensity. Step 4, perform the skill very well at speed and under fatigue. So here's step 4 is where you start preparing your players for that fatigue space. And you can assess how players operate in that fatigue space. Okay? A crucial step, because here we get to collectively identify the danger zones, okay, in a competition. What are those danger zones? It's different for every code, but it could be the last 20 meters. Ask Chad Leclos, he'll tell you about his swimming race, the danger zone, that one extra stroke that got him the gold medal, okay? The last 20 meters of the 100-meter freestyle, the last 5 minutes before halftime in a soccer game or a rugby union game, those are the danger zones, okay? The last play in that game, the 5-meter scrum that you're defending, and you've got to defend your lead. That's a danger zone. Do you have what it takes in that danger zone to do what you need to do to defend your try line? That's the question you need to pose to your teams. And many outcomes will fundamentally come down to the quality of skill execution during the last 5% of time and being able to perform the fundamental skills when absolutely buggered. Physically, you are finished. Can you hit it? Can you perform at that point when your glycogen levels are gone, you are dehydrated, you've got neuromuscular fatigue that you can't even describe. That's how tired you are. But that's going to separate the winning edge, that competitive winning edge. Number 5, perform the skill very well at speed, under fatigue, and under pressure. Far too often we do all of those and then there's no pressure. So you're doing a soccer drill and you want your strikers to score a goal, but there's no defenders running at them in training. That's not what happens in a game. What happens in a game is your defender attacks you and closes your space and puts you under pressure. Same in rugby, same in AFL footy. Okay? So you need to be able to execute in the danger zone when you're fatigued and there's pressure. Can you do all of that? And how are you as a coach preparing your players at that step at number 5? Number 6, excuse me, perform the skill very well at speed, under fatigue, and under consistent pressure. So can you sustain a 15-minute pressure? Look at how many times, in fact, and Sean can correct me, but I believe that one of the biggest comments that came out of the Rugby World Cup final in 2019 when South Africa played England was that period just before halftime where South Africa absolutely, like warriors, defended in their danger zone in the 25-meter area or the 22, however you want to call it. They defended and defended and defended and defended and defended. Even when it came to 2 meters by their line, they were still defending and did not allow anything to break their defense. That is, I can assure you, steps 1 through 6 are absolutely intact in the group that was playing rugby that day for the Springboks. We have at step number 6 here, where we're talking about performing our skills well at speed and under fatigue with consistent pressure. There's 2 parts of our brain here. We've got our training brain and we've got our competition brain. The training brain, that's the brain that we use in training and preparation. And generally that training brain is quite okay with laziness. It's okay with sloppiness, with inaccuracies. Oh, the ball dropped. Oh, it's okay in the game. I won't drop it. I'll pick it up. I won't knock the ball on. Don't worry about it. Or, you know, I'll make that pass when it counts. Don't worry in the game. But you haven't done it once in training. That's our training brain that says, oh, it'll be okay on the day. The competition brain, that's the brain you need to create in your training sessions, because that's the brain that you use on the field of competition or in the pool or in the court. That's the brain we want to train. Okay? So next, yeah. There you go, a little bit about that, the training brain and the competition brain. And the last step, perform the skill very well and at speed. So you've covered all of this. But again, there's my key alert to everybody. No player's well-being is worth a result. Never forsake a player. This, as far as I'm concerned, permeates through every level. I don't care if you're playing for the Springboks or the Proteas or the Hockey Roos or the All Blacks. I don't care. You never, ever as a coach forsake a player. Not for any reason under the sun. Please, I would implore all coaches to make sure that that's fundamental. We're nearly at the end. So I wanted to just cover off. I've covered off my 3 factors of coaching. The role of the coach is something that I just want to touch on briefly. How we make our athletes feel valued is by understanding them, their strengths, their limitations, what motivates them, and any other need that's going to influence how they train, how they interact, how they perform, how they contribute to the unit. Not every athlete is the same, and so every athlete needs to be coached in a way which is suitable for them. That doesn't mean that you've got to, go over and over about certain things. It just means that you need to identify with the individual and you need to coach the individual to be the best versions of themselves. If you are the best version of yourself as a coach, you will make your players the best versions of themselves. So some of the roles, a mentor, okay? Really, and as I've covered off on some of the stuff, but a mentor is somebody who is there with the purpose of building the person. You are mentoring other human beings. You are building people. It's a fundamental role, and you are growing the goodness in people. You are seeing the best in them, and you are enhancing those things, and you are working with them in a constructive way to improve areas that need improving. You need to be a friend. It's a bit of a gray area, this one, and I want to emphasize, particularly in the school space, a friend does not certainly cross the borders or doesn't break boundaries of professionalism. Child safety is imperative. So when I talk about being a friend, I don't mean that as coaches you should be on WhatsApp with your players, particularly at school level now I'm referring to, or that you shouldn't really be Facebook friends with players, and you should never really be interacting with your players in a private scenario where it's inappropriate. So just be very clear. When I talk about a friend, I say that in the most appropriate fashion that we are, we are there for our players and for our support staff. We maintain strict professional standards, and that we take the welfare and the well-being of all our players and all our team members into account, and that is absolutely essential for us. The next one is a counselor, very similar to a mentor, but certainly, although it's similar, there's obviously differences, and sometimes, what I would like to say when it comes to counseling is, if you've got access to support staff or that you can refer to someone that is a professional in that space, most schools today have school counselors. I would, as a coach, definitely refer to a professional in that space, play my role as the coach, share my knowledge, share my information, but I would rather have a professional facilitator who's a counselor helping us in that area, as opposed to taking that on myself. You need to be a negotiator. Every coach needs to be a negotiator. We know that. But in this instance, it's going to play a role in how you bring culture together with process, together with performance, and how you look after all the individuality and the uniqueness, and taking into account, celebrating, as I say, celebrating the diversity, but acknowledging the adversity. You need to be a negotiator. There's ups and downs, there's ebbs and flows, and you need to be able to move with those. You need to be agile and adaptive. Problem solver, you've definitely got to be a problem solver, particularly at school coaching. You rock up and there's another team on your field, or the goals haven't been put up, or there's no nets, or the lines aren't on, or the director of sport or the coach or the sports coordinator didn't open the kit room and it's delayed, and you've got to be a problem solver. You've got to move. You can't be stagnant because of any single problem. And when you're building your coaching philosophy, one of the key areas is that, and I'll come to it just now, is that you need to be adaptive to your environment. You can't blame anything. You've got to get on with it as a coach. There's no excuses. Trustworthy. In growing people, their lives and their circumstances are daily and are absolutely crucial. And as a coach, when we talk about being a friend, a mentor, a counselor, you have to be able to take that on board. And you need to be able to be trustworthy to that individual. Trust is absolutely fundamental. For me, consistency breeds trust, and trust breeds loyalty. And so there's just no way through it, as far as I'm concerned, without that in place. And the final one is being a role model. Being a clear example of the highest standards that you're expecting of your players. You are that example. You lead by example. You are a living, tangible display of the highest standards that you would expect of any one individual in your group. That is you as the coach. It comes with responsibility and it comes with accountability. Don't try and shirk that, because that's really not where we want to be as individuals. And just to end off, final whistle, I suppose, I think obviously the one thing I want to emphasize is that you need to, as a coach, build a philosophy. And a lot of, hopefully what I've spoken about here today helps you build a philosophy. A philosophy is what makes you as a coach, what defines you as an individual. And as I said to you up front, it's the answer to the big question of why do I? And I'm going to leave the rest to you in terms of how you answer that and how you build that. But one of the key areas that I want to cover off on is just being very clear that your environment is something that when you're building your coaching philosophy, you have to be adaptive and agile to your environment, and that you can't blame anything. Whatever environment you land up with, and you need to make the best of it. Your players didn't ask for that environment. They probably didn't cause the environment, so they can't be the victims of it. Coaching in COVID is something that I think we all need to be able to now start thinking about, because how do you as a coach stay relevant? How do you stay connected? How do you engage? Just like we're doing today is something that you've got to take on board. I've looked at the word COVID, and I've got a couple of things that I'm going to start working on. C for computer, O for opportunity, V for virtual, I for individual, D for development. You need to find ways of activating all those different words. We're on the computer today. We've taken the opportunity to take on board. It's a virtual coaching session. Hopefully, as an individual, I'm inspiring your individuals, and I'm contributing to your development, as you are to mine, because I had to work on this presentation. So find a way through COVID to remain engaged, remain connected, and remain relevant to not only yourself, but to certainly address these interesting and challenging times. And I find that with COVID, what's happened here is it's given us a chance to really engage on so many different levels of awareness. We get to not only deal with game awareness, but we get to deal with self-awareness, get to deal with ourselves. So use that opportunity to fundamentally work on your coaching philosophy that you build over time, okay? If you want to catch up on any of the articles that I've written, and certainly some of the videos that I've released on some coaching topics, I do have a YouTube channel, and it's there. You just search The Sporting Edge with Greg H, and you'll be able to see some content that I load every so often. And I had the privilege of talking to Sean a few weeks ago, which is a really fantastic conversation. So in essence, really, I just want to thank everybody for the opportunity of spending time with you today. And I really hope that, you know, you can interact with me on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube. I really don't even mind if you really want to talk to me about something specific. Sean will give you my mobile number down here in Melbourne, and you're more than welcome. I'm always happy to have a conversation with fellow coaches who hopefully I can learn from and grow. So a big thank you. And really, I just want to wish you all just safe, you know, be as safe as possible in these very difficult, challenging times. You know, get out there and give it your best and change lives. I think many coaches, you don't realize the legacies that you leave and the stories that people tell about you many, many years on. You have that opportunity to engage and impact on an individual right now. And I really would hope that you take that opportunity seriously and you deliver on it in as full a way as possible. So thank you again, and just my best wishes to all of you.